Here in Canada, we're big favorites of kayfabe because we learn from the best at Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling and Lutte International in Montreal, Maple Leaf Wrestling in Toronto, of course, Stampede Wrestling in Calgary. But this guy, who unfortunately died today after a long life and a very controversial one, him and Hacksaw Jim Duggan pretty well destroyed kayfabe through a traffic stop. Now, you're going to hear a lot of podcasts today about the Iron Sheik, and a lot of them will tell two true tales. Some will stretch the truth, but I want to give you a true tale that I remember like yesterday. Now, May 1987, I was a young reporter for Dalhousie News in Dalhousie, New Brunswick, and on the radio, as part of the sports section of all things, mentioned that him and Hacksaw Jim Duggan, which was his on-screen rival to WWF at the time, were pulled over by the New Jersey State Police on their way to a WWF event, suspecting Duggan of a DUI. After a search of the vehicle and the persons, police discovered that Duggan was under the influence of marijuana, while the Sheik was high on cocaine. Small amounts of cocaine were also found in the vehicle. Now, after all the rigmarole died down, Duggan received a conditional release while the Sheik was placed on probation for a year. The mini scandal that erupted after the two in-ring enemies were found drinking and doing drugs together led to the end of the angle, the Sheik's release, and Duggan's temporary departure from the WWF. This is basically considered the death of the modern era of kayfabe, although Vince McMahon said a few years later, with the Attitude Era and good guys versus bad guys, the famous speech, this is where it pretty well ended, because at the time, the heels and the faces would not travel together, and the possibility of getting caught. Now, at the time, the Sheik was making big money as him and Nikolai Volkov were embroiled in a feud with the patriotic Duggan. Before the Sheiks released from the company, he and Volkov had defeated the Killer Bees, jumping Jim Brunzell and B. Brian Blair, by DQ at WrestleMania 3 in front of 93,000 people at the Pontiac Silverdome, when Duggan hit the Sheik from behind with a 2x4 piece of wood while he had Brunzell in the camel clutch. After Sheik's arrest, he worked in house shows against Jim Duggan until leaving the WWF in October 87, and that was it for him as a marquee champion, obviously a transitional champion towards Hulk Hogan's reign. Did come back, of course, in the Iraqi sympathizer, Sergeant Slaughter against Hulk Hogan when Hulk Hogan won his title back after Slaughter won against the Ultimate Warrior. But his career was never the same. For a lot of people, up until the documentary that the WWE did in recent months, for certain people, they make him a parody, but a very highly connected wrestler. And in the history of the WWE of the 1980s, he's a top 10 heel, even though he wasn't over in Canada and other countries because, Iranian and, Middle Eastern wrestlers were very popular in Canada. He never really drew any heat outside the States, and that was easy heat because Iran was the solid enemy of the States for a number of years. After his former employer, the Shah, he was a bodyguard for the Shah, was thrown out of power. So, ladies and gentlemen, all the condolences to Sheik's fans and his family. He's a part of history. But like I said, we remember the day when kayfabe died across Canada. And kayfabe was like this, ladies and gentlemen. If you would go to an Atlantic Grand Prix wrestling event in the late 1970s, you would never know that Leap and Lanny, the champion, against the number one contender, Randy Macho Man Savage, were brothers. Nobody talked about that. We knew we were brothers. The fans followed the kayfabe. And I give an example. My good friend Killer Carl Krupp, although doing a German Nazi character, was actually Dutch and a survivor of the Holocaust. So, kayfabe, we would protect the wrestlers would protect us. It was more cartoon, but from, I think, when The Undertaker showed up in 89 up until Hogan left for WCW and NWO, it was, not, they tried bringing back kayfabe, but just, like I said, Duggan and the Iron Sheik destroyed it, and maybe did that on purpose. Some theories is that he did that deliberately because the stress of being on the road. You do 200 to 300 nights on the road back in the day. So the Iron Sheik, again, he will be missed. And don't forget, if you see any podcast of the Iron Sheik, make sure that the presenter is reputable, because there's a lot of stories through the years, especially the rumor that Vern Gagne was going to pay money to the Sheik to knock off Hogan. I don't know the reliability of that, because the Sheik has repeated a story, but is it a story or is it kayfabe? We still don't know, because the last person that could confirm it is Greg Gagne, and I don't think he's talking for no money, if you know what I'm saying. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's our latest pro wrestling podcast. If you like what we're doing here on our channel, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share. And if you're into Camel Clutch, you can't get out. That's all I can say. That's not kayfabe. And don't forget, if you can do the what they call the big pins that the Sheik would roll, you're pretty strong. I know only Bob Backlund could do those. Thanks for listening. Bye.